Imagine this. Overnight, fortune smiles on you. Maybe a small investment explodes beyond reason. A business you started as a side experiment suddenly prints cash. Or an inheritance you never expected falls into your hands. It feels divine, doesn't it? Yet Machiavelli warned, fortune is a woman, and she favors the bold, but she abandons the unprepared. What feels like a blessing can become an execution, because sudden wealth, like sudden power, doesn't change who you are. It exposes you. It amplifies your flaws, your habits, and your illusions. You think you're gaining freedom. What you're actually gaining is gravity, the kind that pulls everyone around you into your orbit, hungry for a piece of your new world. You might think this scenario is rare. It isn't. Just by probability, among the many who have seen this channel, several have already found themselves holding winning lottery tickets, successful crypto bets, or equity stakes in startups that skyrocketed overnight. And statistically, a few more of you will join them. But here's the dark twist. Those who stumble into wealth rarely keep it. Studies of lottery winners and instant millionaires reveal a strange law. The faster they rise, the faster they fall. More than half end up divorced, addicted, or bankrupt within a few short years. They lose friends, family, and peace of mind long before the money is gone. Why? Because they mistake wealth for wisdom. They forget that the art of maintaining power is far more difficult than acquiring it. Machiavelli saw this in rulers who inherited kingdoms they didn't build. He who becomes prince through fortune alone, he wrote, will maintain his power only so long as fortune favors him. The same applies to money. If you didn't cultivate the discipline that creates wealth, the fortune will erode faster than you can spend it. So before you celebrate, understand this. Your greatest advantage is silence. The world will urge you to broadcast your success, to post it, flaunt it, wear it like a crown. But those who shout their victories invite conquest. The moment you expose wealth, you expose weakness. The wise become what I call stealth wealth, the men who own everything yet appear to own nothing. Their neighbors think they live modestly, but their influence stretches far beyond the visible. Take a lesson from history. Cesare Borgia, one of Machiavelli's most studied figures, built an empire through cunning, charm, and calculated cruelty. Yet even he learned that visibility breeds enemies. His fortune attracted more betrayal than admiration. Similarly, centuries later, a man named Jack Whittaker won $315 million in a Powerball draw. He became a national celebrity overnight, parading generosity as his new identity, handing cash to strangers, funding churches, buying homes for friends. The public loved him for a while. But when the noise faded, so did his world. His wife left him. His friends vanished. His granddaughter, drowned in luxury and vice, died from an overdose. When interviewed years later, Whittaker confessed that wealth had been his curse. "I wish I'd torn up that ticket," he said. That confession could have been lifted straight from the prince, because the first rule of sudden wealth is the same as the first rule of surviving power. Conceal it. Hide your strength until it's stable. If fortune gives you gold, act as though she hasn't. Not because humility is moral, but because secrecy is survival. In an age of visibility, anonymity is the new armor. You may think you can outsmart this truth, that you can manage the attention, filter the requests, or control the narrative. But Machiavelli would remind you that men are fickle and envious by nature. The moment they sense advantage, they will test your boundaries. Even those closest to you will unconsciously begin to measure their lives against yours. And comparison breeds resentment faster than greed. So the question becomes, how do you actually protect yourself in a world that worships exposure? How do you live unseen while still moving boldly toward greater power? The answer lies not only in silence, but in structure. Because privacy isn't just about who you tell, it's about how you build. And that brings us to the second law of sudden fortune, the Machiavellian art of disguise. You can't simply be wealthy, you must learn how to move as the wealthy move. Unseen, untouchable, and protected behind legal walls that turn your wealth into an invisible fortress. The second law, then, is concealment through structure. Machiavelli taught that a prince must build fortresses not of stone, but of strategy. In your case, that fortress is privacy disguised as normalcy. Even if you say nothing, those around you will sense something has changed. People can smell fortune the way wolves smell blood. They notice small upgrades, new habits, subtle shifts in confidence. The world teaches you to display success. Machiavelli teaches you to disguise it. The first person you tell should not be a friend or family member. It should be an attorney, a modern-day consigliere, one who knows the language of trusts, foundations, and tax shields. Because real wealth is never owned. It is structured. When Machiavelli advised rulers to rule through intermediaries, he was describing the same principle. Power works best when it flows through layers that conceal its source. In today's terms, that means a trust that hides your name, a holding company that shields your assets, and professionals who handle your affairs quietly while your public life remains unchanged. Discretion is not paranoia, it is power. Jack Whittaker shouted his fortune and died hollow. The Rothschilds built theirs by staying invisible for centuries. Even when they financed wars and kings, the family appeared modest, quiet, even boring. They let their influence speak louder than their lifestyle. That's stealth wealth, the aristocracy of silence. Now, people will tell you not to quit your job. I disagree, but with nuance. The point is not to keep a job, it's to keep momentum. Work keeps the mind sharp and the ego humble. Machiavelli wrote, "Idleness makes men soft." The danger of sudden wealth isn't spending, it's stagnation. So don't quit working. Quit only what drains your spirit or limits your autonomy. If your job is suffocating, leave it on your terms, not as an escape, but as a statement of sovereignty. The key is rhythm. Stay active, stay building, stay useful. A working man is focused. An idle one becomes prey to impulse. Look at the wealthiest men of our age. Jeff Bezos didn't scatter his energy across random pursuits. He fortified one fortress, Amazon, and expanded it methodically. Warren Buffett spent decades refining one craft, investing, and still wakes up to work at 90. They understand what Machiavelli understood. Focus is a form of power, and consistency is a weapon. The prince who divides his attention weakens his defenses. The man who spreads his fortune thin invites collapse. Once your habits and identity stabilize, it's time to secure your finances against invisible threats, debts. Machiavelli warned rulers to extinguish internal dangers before external ones. For a disease seen early is easy to cure, but if neglected, becomes incurable. Debt is exactly that disease. High-interest loans and credit cards are silent assassins that feed on indifference. They might seem trivial when your accounts overflow, but compound interest moves faster than greed. A 20% interest rate can consume a fortune quicker than a thief. So treat debt as a rebellion within your walls. Crush it first. Pay off high-interest obligations before you invest a dime. It's the only guaranteed return in finance. Eliminate a 20% interest, and you've effectively earned 20% risk-free. Then examine your other liabilities: car loans, personal loans, even mortgages. If the interest is high, cut it out. If it's low, like 2–3%, consider keeping it, using that capital to generate higher returns elsewhere. This isn't frugality, it's strategy. Machiavelli would say, "A wise ruler spends not to appear rich, but to remain rich." When you eliminate debt, you do more than clean your balance sheet. You reclaim psychological peace. You remove the subtle anxiety that gnaws at every decision. You silence the inner debtor that tells you wealth is temporary. Without that noise, you start to think like a sovereign instead of a servant. But remember, even with your fortress intact, even with your debts slain, your greatest threat still lies ahead, not from markets or taxes, but from emotion. Specifically, the emotions of others. Because when you become rich, you do not just attract opportunity. You awaken hunger in the people closest to you, and in the next stage, that hunger will test you in ways that numbers and spreadsheets never could. Once you've built your fortress and silenced your debts, a new war begins, the war of emotion. Machiavelli said, "Men are more ready to offend one who desires to be loved than one who wishes to be feared." In wealth, the danger doesn't come from enemies. It comes from friends, relatives, and lovers who feel entitled to your fortune. When you suddenly rise, they will tell themselves stories. "You owe me. You were lucky. You wouldn't have made it without me." Their logic is emotional, not rational. They don't mean harm, but envy doesn't announce itself. It whispers. The fifth law of sudden wealth is this: never lend money to friends or family. The moment you do, you turn relationships into transactions. If they fail to repay, resentment festers. If they succeed, they feel owned. Either way, you lose. Machiavelli warned princes never to give what they could not take back without hatred. The same applies to money. When people believe you have limitless resources, they begin to test your limits. They'll ask for just a small loan, a business idea, a bridge payment. Decline once, and you become the villain. Accept once, and you become the bank. The solution is strategic compassion. If someone you care about truly needs help, say a medical emergency or a tragedy, then give freely, but only once, and never call it a loan. Tell them you're gifting it, but under one condition: they never ask again. This resets the power dynamic. You remain generous, but not submissive. And paradoxically, you'll preserve the relationship longer by drawing that line. Machiavelli's logic of mercy applies perfectly here. It is better to inflict a single harm than to let it linger daily. Be clear, not cruel. Decide once and move on. Look at modern examples. Athletes who rose from poverty often lose everything, not to bad investments, but to generosity. They bankroll entire families, carry dozens of dependents, and become prisoners of guilt. When the money dries up, those same people vanish. The late boxer Mike Tyson once earned over $300 million and declared bankruptcy within a decade. His fortune was drained not just by extravagance, but by the countless hands that reached for it. Wealth exposes the truth: who values you, and who values what you provide. Machiavelli would say this is natural. People are loyal only as long as they benefit. Therefore, your power must never depend on their affection. It must depend on your boundaries. To preserve fortune, you must sometimes appear cold. But remember, steel without control breaks. Control without heart corrodes. The trick is to act like the sun, warm from a distance, untouchable up close. Now, once you've mastered generosity, another temptation awaits: spending. This is where more men fall than any battlefield in history. The sixth law is ancient but eternal. Never consume the principle, only the yield. The rich who stay rich treat money like farmland. They harvest without destroying the soil. The poor who get rich treat it like firewood. They burn through their own foundation to feel warmth. Let me give you a story. A family in California won a massive lottery jackpot. They bought a mansion, luxury cars, private schooling, and designer everything. 2 years later, they were forced to sell the house for half its price. Their wealth didn't vanish. It was eaten alive by debt, taxes, and bad decisions. They violated what I call the golden rule of the prince. Your capital is your kingdom. You protect it. You live off its borders, never its heart. In practical terms, that means you live off the interest your fortune generates, not the fortune itself. Machiavelli advised rulers to always maintain reserves for fortune changes, and he who builds without measure builds for ruin. Calculate your freedom figure, the annual income required to live as you desire. Multiply it by 25. That's your invisible throne. For example, if you need $200,000 a year to live freely, you must protect 5 million. The interest sustains you. The capital endures. Even if you haven't reached that number yet, start thinking like a ruler. Every decision about money is either an investment in sovereignty or a surrender to impulse. Every dollar you keep growing multiplies your time, your calm, and your options. The goal isn't luxury, it's leverage. But once you've built that system, once your fortune stands on its own legs, what do you do with it? Where do you deploy your capital so it multiplies quietly without exposing you to chaos or risk? The answer lies in the final law of fortune: how to build a portfolio worthy of a prince, diverse, protected, and everlasting. Now that you've learned to guard your fortune, the question becomes, how do you make it multiply without losing your peace? Machiavelli warned that a ruler must never rely solely on fortune's favor, but on structure, systems that endure beyond his presence. Wealth without system is chaos waiting to happen. So the seventh law of fortune is this: treat investing as governance. You're no longer merely a worker. You are the architect of your own state. Start by understanding that investment isn't gambling, it's statecraft. Every dollar is a soldier, and every market a battlefield. If you deploy your soldiers recklessly, you lose both capital and command. But if you organize them into divisions, each with its own role, you build an empire that can survive wars, recessions, and time. That's what the modern elites understand. The true 1% aren't just rich. They are sovereigns. They move through markets the way kings move through kingdoms, calculating, deliberate, detached from panic. So how does a modern prince divide his wealth? Consider this as a framework, not gospel. Machiavelli believed that the wise prince strengthens himself through variety, alliances, armies, and fortresses. Your wealth should do the same. First, allocate a significant portion to broad, diversified equity. Something like a total stock market index fund. It's the engine of growth, the army that expands your borders year after year. Over the long run, this domain has averaged close to 9% returns, a reflection of innovation, human ambition, and compounding time. But remember, the wise don't expect fortune to always smile. They prepare for her storms. That's why you build your second division, bonds. These are your diplomats, slow but steady, preserving order when markets riot. They may yield less, 4 or 5%, but they protect your capital in chaos. Machiavelli would call this prudence, balancing aggression with defense. Next, add your land, real estate. Historically, kings and merchants alike anchored their wealth in tangible property because men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. A well-chosen estate, whether residential or commercial, produces both income and appreciation, anchoring your empire in the real world. Then, your speculative guard, the moonshot. In our age, this means assets like Bitcoin or Ethereum. But here's the trick. You invest in them not as a gambler, but as a strategist. Machiavelli admired boldness, but despised recklessness. The same applies here. Limit these to a small portion of your holdings, 5 to 10%. Treat them as scouts exploring new territories. Their potential is great, but their loyalty to reason is limited. Lastly, keep a portion in liquid reserves, cash or high-yield savings. This is your peace fund, your reserve army for emergencies or opportunity. A prince with liquidity never panics. He waits for others to fall and buys their ruin at a discount. Even 4 to 5% annual yield on a large reserve can produce tens of thousands in passive income. Steady, invisible, secure. If you combine these divisions, a core in stocks, a guard in bonds, a base in property, a venture arm in crypto, and a treasury in cash, you'd have a kingdom that generates wealth from every side. Historically, such a structure could return roughly 6 to 7% a year. On 5 million, that's over 300,000 in annual income. That's your freedom number manifest, a fortress that feeds you without consuming itself. But remember, returns fluctuate, markets rise and fall, and fortune, as always, is unpredictable. The goal is not excitement, it's endurance. The Renaissance bankers, the Medici, understood this centuries ago. They lent to kings, funded wars, and survived revolutions not because they chased fortune, but because they designed systems to tame her. They diversified across nations, assets, and generations. They weren't just rich, they were immortalized. The same principle applies today. To stay rich, you must think in decades, not days. Now, there's one last principle. Even princes need pleasure. Set aside a small sum, a few $100,000 if you're dealing in millions, as fun money. Indulge wisely. Buy what brings you genuine joy, not what signals status. Machiavelli believed appearances mattered, but only when they served power. A tasteful indulgence strengthens identity. Reckless luxury weakens command. Real wealth is waking up and deciding what to do with your time, not flaunting what you've spent. Once you've secured your fortress, look beyond yourself. The ultimate purpose of money is not excess. It's legacy. Invest in ideas, people, and causes that outlive you. Let your fortune be not just protection, but philosophy. Evidence that power, when tempered by wisdom, becomes virtue. If you truly understand this final law, you'll see that wealth is not noise, it's silence. It's not luxury, it's leverage. And in the words of Machiavelli himself, it is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. So act, but act with foresight. Build your fortress, guard it, grow it, and never let the world know where your crown truly lies. If you wish to learn how to build that fortress from scratch, step by step, using the same principles of power and patience, I'll leave the next lesson waiting for you. You know where to find it.